All right.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the May 14th regular board meeting of the Sandy Creek Board of Education. It's a virtual meeting this evening, and at this point, I would call that meeting to order, and I would ask that you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, our technology does not support public comment as it hasn't in the past meetings we've had to do on this format. So, again, I think if the public has any questions or comments, contact the board members. They are your elected officials, and they will bring the information forward. Moving on to item 4, the superintendent wishes to make a statement this evening about where we stand for the purposes of bringing everybody up to speed. So, Kyle?
First of all, I'd like to say there has not been one superintendent, business administrator, or Board of Education member who has not done their very best in the past or present. Now is not the time to look for blame. We are dealing with something that no one could have ever anticipated, and we are doing what is best for kids. That is what we do. Sandy Creek isn't alone in dealing with this pandemic. I know of no other school that's not facing the exact same things that we are facing. The possibility of cuts across the board. It's a grim situation. It's nothing that any of us want to be a part of, but it's the reality. And the most important thing to remember is we are in it together, and we need to continue to work together to do what's best for our kids. What has been made perfectly clear is that local governments, including schools, can no longer depend on the state for constant increases in aid. Before the pandemic, the state had a $6 billion deficit. The state deficit is now estimated to be anywhere from $15 billion to $61 billion, as was mentioned in the press conference yesterday. As the saying goes, it all flows downhill. Moving forward, this district is going to have to right size and refrain from relying on the use of reserves. This is going to be a multiple year process. We won't be done after this year, folks. We're in this for the long haul. You also need to know that the state does not allow districts to have more than 4% fund balance or a savings account for general emergencies. We know that that makes no sense, but that's how the state of New York does it. That seriously impedes districts in times of emergency as well. I can't think of a more time of an emergency than right now. As such, the use of remaining unused funds from the current year will be added to fund balance regardless of the 4% threshold. It's our job to build it back up. Additional reasoning for the buildup of fund balance is the threat of state aid takebacks of aid from this current school year, 1920, and for the next school year, 2021. The governor has said this amount to be 20%, but 20% total aid, foundation aid, some quarterly aid payment, and how often? They have stated measurement periods of state revenues, for example, April 1st to April 30th, May 1st to June 30th, etc. Those factors are all undetermined as of this meeting. As you can see, we're in a state of flux with a very uncertain future. Unfortunately, combined with our decreasing reserves, this means that we will have to make some very painful and uncomfortable position eliminations. It's nothing that any of us wants to do. We don't relish this. We talk about this. We pine over this, and we try to do ultimately what's in the best interest of kids. It's not an easy job, and it's not something that any of us wants to do. Finally, to those staff members who have chosen to retire, you will truly be missed. We cannot understand what you are going through now, not being able to be with your students and peers as you close out your careers. However, by retiring, you probably save some jobs, and for that, we are forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm sure all of us concur with that. And we thank the retiring employees of the district for their decision, which will preserve some positions. Moving ahead, item 5 on the agenda this evening is the budget presentation, and I believe Shelley has that. Shelley, you're on mute.
She knows.
Did it pop up in your window yet?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's presentation is a culmination of many administrative team and Board of Education finance subcommittee meetings. The proposed expenditure plan is the district's best guesstimate as to what the future may bring. Going forward, we have no idea what the educational environment will look like any more than any of you. So, but we are in great hopes that hopefully we will all be back in session. This is very hard and trying on families, we know that, but there's nothing we can do about it. So let's get to the numbers. Oops. Very touchy. Okay, well, we'll start looking at estimated revenues. The revenues other than state aid use the reserves and of the tax levy all remain to be stable, and there is little change in those. Those would be these items right here, from the 25,000 interest dependency on taxes to the refund of prior year's expense other. State aid number is in flux, as Kyle just stated. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I think it's allergies, but I'm sticking it out. There will be a process where there used to be a process where the governor would put out a number for state aid, and then the legislature would put out their aid, and it would be a little bit higher number. That didn't happen this year. Here's the timeline of what happened. At first, the governor put out a proposed number for state aid on January 21st with a brand new formula combining many expense-driven aids in the main aid category of foundation aid. That evening, the governor's office released the backup for the new formula calculations. At that point, we were to receive an increase in total aid of $300,176. Great. At that point, we were still in hopes that the legislature was going to provide us something more with a state aid number by the time the budget was set in April 1st. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit. Everything went into a stalemate. And as the days ticked by, the outlook for the state decreased exponentially. Fast forward to April 1st, the state legislature passed a budget that increased Sandy Creek state aid by approximately $85,000, not the $300,000 number that the governor had previously given us. And also within that legislative aid number was a new aid referred to as pandemic aid. That number was shown as a takeaway from foundation aid and then added back as a federal flow-through aid for a grant that the state has not even applied for as of yet because the grant isn't written. It's just something out there that the federal government put out. So at that point, as a business official, we all met. We're like, do we count that money? Do we not count that money? Is that money coming? We don't know. So that was the question. Finally, we received the answer that yes, count on receiving that number. For our purposes, that Federal CARES Act money, which is the pandemic aid money, is now included in our state aid number total of $15,069,955. But that's not the theory on the topic of state aid. As Kyle stated, the governor stated many times that the pandemic state from a deficit of $5 billion was up to $61 billion. That they will be corresponding take back of aid in the 20% range. We have not received any guidance on that to date. and are therefore left in flux, as Kyle stated. This could be a large number, it could be a small number. That remains to be seen. So right now, we are going with the numbers that we are provided as an increase of 85,000. Moving forward to reserves, which would be these items right here. As stated previously, the district has been using reserves to fill budget deficits. The reserves are slowly being consumed. We have chosen to use basically the same numbers from the current year to next year, and we will go over the reserve balances and use this after the tax levy. Down here's the tax levy. The tax increase in this budget is slated to be a 2% increase. Initially, we had proposed 4%. However, with the state of the economy, a 4% was no longer feasible. This 2% increase is equal to 136,303 over the limit, over the whole entire community district, or a 30-cent increase per thousand of assessed value. Meaning if your property is assessed at 50,000, the tax increase would be $15 for next year. If your property is assessed at 100,000, the tax increase for the year would be $30.
I think it's important to point out here that a 2% tax increase for Sandy Creek gives the district only $136,000. So while a 2% tax increase sounds like a lot, it doesn't give the district much revenue.
The estimated tax on true per 1,000 of assessed value will increase from $14.83 to $15.13. Estimated. We use the numbers from last year's rolls in order to do that. We're conservative. I don't know what the new rolls are yet. They're not set yet. All those deadlines were moved. I don't know what numbers we're going to be using, so we use last year's numbers. If we look at the reserves now, here are our balances and what we have scheduled to use. Moving from the top to the bottom, we have a workers' compensation reserve of 272,000 and change. This reserve is to assist the district if the district were to move away from the consortium that they are in. It will cover the lag premium when we leave. We have an unemployment insurance reserve as the district is self-insured for unemployment. This reserve has been used in the past to balance the budget and now sits at $10,937. The employee's retirement contribution reserve is an estimated balance of $597,000 and change at the end of this year, estimated because it does earn interest, etc. We have put in the budget for next year the use of the 270,103. We also have an employee benefit limited liability reserve. This has an estimated balance of $1.7 million. And this year we're going to use $730 of our reserve for our budget. Most of the capital reserve has been put into the capital fund to use for the projects that the voters passed. The remaining will also be put in the capital fund and spent with the project. The same premise goes for the capital reserve for transportation. The amount we have scheduled to use for is the unaided share of the bus purchases for 2021 school year. The remaining will go mostly to the capital fund for the new bus maintenance facility that the voters passed. That was part of the funding formula. Lastly, the debt service reserve. This currently has an estimated balance of almost 45,000, excuse me. The reserve has to be specifically spent against the money that it was borrowed on. So meaning when we pay the debt and pay the borrowings off, we use that as a revenue to help pay that debt. Keep in mind that we are using 798,000, this number right here, in the budget for 21. We must either continue that amount or get revenue elsewhere to replace it unless the budget is trimmed in the future. Here is tax levy increase. What I said, 2% equals 136, 30 cents on 100,000 is $30, 50,000 property, $15. All right, here's the budget outlook. Yes, it's grim. Moving from last year's total expenditure plan of 23,026,551, we have the following for the 2021 budget. Increase in employee benefits of 308,682. A decrease in the bus purchases. The buses were a little bit cheaper that we're getting this year. That is why the reserve money was a little bit lower. We didn't have to take out as much for the unaided portion. The contractual obligations and miscellaneous other. That's the contract that covers our contractual obligations with our bargaining unit, and as well as our professional service contracts, our maintenance, etc. That goes up almost 250,000. Last year, we had a larger minimum wage increase in our contractual obligations with our bargaining units. This year and subsequent years will be smaller due to the large jump last year. As you can see, our debt service is much lower as our old debt from the 99 project has been paid off. In the state aid number is the building aid that is the equivalent of the increase in debt. So last year we paid off the old debt. This year we have an increase in the new debt, and included in the state aid revenues is the building aid that corresponds with this 511. So this brings us up to the preliminary expenditure plan increase of $1,052,000. The revenues are I'm sorry, it's just the revenues are equally complicated. The increase in state aid is 85,000, and the large sum of the drop off of the little minor things. And then see this right here is where the aid dropped off because the aid expense was lowered, so the aid for the building project dropped off, and this is a little bit higher. The only aid that we've got this year is this 85,000. So if you take away, just as a side note, if you take away the aid that we get on the 511, away from the 5,000, it'd be a negative increase in general aid. So the building aid that we're getting is bringing us out of the hole from aid to a positive. Got it? Okay, that's this and this. So, and the other revenues was minor right there. So the total revenues was $80,000, and if you add them all together, it brings us to a deficit of $1,923,000 going into the future. How we will eliminate this deficit or close the gap? Remember, last year's deficit was 1181. This year's 1923. Here we are closing the gap. So currently we have at 1923. We have said that we're going to use 798,000 in reserves, and we're going to have a 2% increase in the tax levy. That brings us to deficit before fund balance. So we have 987,000. We're going to subtract 150,000 to bring us to 837,000. Now, many of you have heard my conversation before about the black hole and fund balance, but I'll give you the abbreviated version. The more you apply in the next year's budget of fund balance, the more you need to have left over from the year before. If the budget is tight and you appropriate more than you have left over, you have put yourself in a big black hole. That is why the number stays constant. You'll see in some other districts the number can be huge. Perhaps at the end of next year, we will have more to appropriate once we know what we are doing. Or we may have less. For instance, if we have to double bus to maintain social distancing, that's not in our budget for our plan for 2021 to accommodate that. We will not be able to accommodate that unless we go into fund balance to do that process, along with anything else that we might have to do next year. We have not figured that in. So that's why that fund balance number, and you can say, yeah, we got a lot of money left over from this year, but we really don't have a lot of money left over People talk about transportation and busing. Well, if you don't put miles on the road to bus the students, then that does not become aidable. Now that estimate for next year is already in our aid figure from this year's bus mileage. Exactly. So we're gonna have, fund balance is gonna be a stab in the dark as well. So that brings us to our remaining deficit in $37,874. Now, this year, we have 5 people that submitted their retirement letters, the district data coordinator, 2 elementary K-6 teachers, 1 reading teacher, and 1 local area network technology employee. So we have 430,222 in retirement to put against that deficit. We also going to cut 21,574 out of supplies and materials to clean up the gap that we have left. And this is where I turn it over to the superintendent.
So this is the actual really horrible part. This is the part that, keeps us up at night worrying about where we're going to make this gap up. And these are the things that as an administrative team and the Board of Education, we go back and forth on, and we try to figure out which is the least negative impact on students, which is never easy. The positions we have listed for elimination are the following: 1 art teacher, 1 special education aide, 1 teacher aide, 1 special education teacher, 1 physical education teacher, and 1 reading teacher. We plan to share our home and careers teacher with Pulaski in a 60-40 share, which saves a job, obviously. And finally, we'll move to the concept of after-school driver's ed. We are the only remaining district in the county that does not administer driver's ed in this manner. That will be something we'll look to do. These position eliminations will close the gap to our deficit. This is where we are at currently for our budget of 2021. But please keep in mind, we do not have final numbers. We've heard that final numbers will be given out by the governor tomorrow. There's no guarantee of that. We may kick the can down the road a little bit and hope for more aid from the federal government. We simply do not know. Unfortunately, we're on a very limited time span at this point. We have to make very, very quick decisions without the best information. The next steps in the process are for the board to adopt a budget next week by May 20th at the latest. And the final budget hearing is scheduled for May 28th, 2020 at 6 o'clock. The budget vote this year is scheduled for June 9th. The voting will be absentee ballot only. This is very new this year. It's never happened before. The process will be as follows. Every registered voter will receive a ballot in the U.S. mail. Inside will be an instruction sheet, a ballot envelope, postage paid return envelope. All ballots must be received by June 9th at 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., the district election officials will begin to hand count the ballots. If you are not a registered voter, you may register through the Department of Motor Vehicles and get online and do that. We do have 1 candidate running for the Board of Education for a 1 5-year seat. Her name is Michelle Warner. She resides on New Scriba Drive.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Any more, Shelley?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Kyle, anything further?
I'm good. Good as we can be.
Okay. I want to thank Kyle and Shelley for all their hard work on pulling this together. And again, these are preliminary numbers. We may find something else out next week. I would ask if any of the board members have any questions of Shelley or Kyle, and please make the the questions as specific as possible. This all has to be transcribed by the office staff. Does anyone have any further questions of Kyle or Shelley? Okay, hearing no questions. Item 6 involves consent agenda changes, of which we have none, I believe.
Right.
And we'll move forward on item 7 with the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes of the April 2nd, 2020 board meeting, the April 23rd, 2020 board meeting, approval of CSD recommendations, approval of financial reports, approval of resignations and terminations. Again, sad to see these individuals go who are retiring, but they're doing their colleagues a service by preserving positions. Item 7.5, approval of appointments. We have a number of appointments. That is a motion to rescind a prior approval of appointments for the spring coaches, as there are no spring sports, and there are a number of those. So at this point, I would take a motion on those items.
John, I'll move.
Brian moves.
I'll second.
Was that Deanna?
That's Andrea.
Oh, Andrea.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I will take a roll call vote on that. Brian?
Aye.
Deanna?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And Andrea?
Aye.
Okay. All those are in favor, and the motion carries. Moving ahead to item 8, and this is an action item. This is the agreement for sponsorship of continuing education with the city. I would take a motion to get that on the table. Let's see, 8.1, yes. Take a motion to get that on the table.
I'll move.
Was that
Joe.
Joe?
A second.
Okay. Heidi seconds. Questions or comments on that item? All those in favor? Again, aye. Brian?
Aye.
Deanna?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And Andrea?
Aye.
Okay. That motion also carries. Moving forward to item 9, and that is for executive session. Do we have need for executive session for matters of personnel? Kyle? Shelley?
Yes.
Okay, we have need for an executive session for items of personnel, and at this point, I would take a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move.
Heidi moves.
I'll second.
Mark seconds. All those in favor of going into executive session? Aye. Brian?
Aye.
Deanna?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
And Andrea?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in executive session and would anticipate, I believe, no Okay, we are back in regular session. And at this point, we have no further action to come before the board. I believe. Anything else to come before the board? All right, seeing nothing, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Deanna moves.
I'll second.
Mark seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This was a very productive evening, and good job.
Thanks,
So we're-
Thanks, guys.
Yep, we're adjourned.
Stay healthy.
You too.
Absolutely. Stay well, stay healthy. Huh.